I titled it "The Curse of Non-Fungibility," but so it's going to be about dark magic. Um, but before that, yeah, as Austin said, just a brief mention. I am the director of product for Skyver at Horizon Games. We work on the different products. We have our final test phase this Thursday, actually, and we just released a bunch of information about our economy. So this is the only mention I'll make about my products, and I'm gonna jump right into it. All right. So before I go into what I call the curse of non-fungibility, uh, I in the last few weeks I've been thinking about what is non-fungibility, not so much because of the technical definition, but what is the perceived definition of non-fungibility. And I had the intuition that people use the term NFTs for a lot more than non-fungible assets. So I started doing some fun Twitter polls, and the first one was: Is an ERC20 token with a forever total supply of one an NFT? Right, and we got almost 800 replies, and most people said yes, which was a bit surprising to me. But some people pointed out that, well, perhaps is the supply of one, are we accounting for decimals? Because a supply of one with 18 decimals, it's still fungible. So to clarify this, I made it another one. Is an ERC20 token that is not divisible, that has 0 decimals, with a forever maximum supply of one, an NFT? And most people said yes again, which is what I expected. Now, one thing I expected a bit less was this one, the other side of the question, the other interpretation of the first question. If there is only one Unisoc that would ever exist, and if it was divisible, like the current Unisocs, would it be considered an NFT? And most people said yes again, with less. Just to point out, only 50 people replied, of course, so take it with a grain of salt. But it looks like it's trending toward the yes. And to push it even further, I tried 2 days ago. See, okay, well, what if we take B polls every day is the first 5,000 NFTs, which is the background of my presentation, actually. What if we took that and said, we asked people, okay, imagine that people sold exact same token ID, same token address, maybe with ERC20, ERC1155, no decimal, maximum supply of two, right? So there's two assets that are identical that you couldn't distinguish. Would these be considered NFTs? And with 100 reply, most people said yes, although the difference is very small, but it's clear that there's a confusion, which to me I found it interesting. It seems to point that the concept of NFTs is going beyond the non-fungibility or the technical definition that I think a lot of us are that have been around for a while are used to. And I would also expect that this is my audience, which is probably slightly biased towards the more technical. So anyway, so this brings me to other questions of what is non-fungible. And a lot of people think that $20 bills or behave like as if $20 bills were fungible asset, where you don't think which $20 bill you're going to give the cashier. However, in practice, $20 bills are non-fungible. Are non-fungible. Their IDs. There's each of them has a unique identifier, and this specific one you see on the screen is actually worth $130. So it's very possible that some of the $20 bills you've used in the past are worth more or less than $20. But we almost everyone treats them as fungible. So non-fungibility, I like to see it almost as a subjective experience where some people will perceive assets to be fungible, even though by technical definition they are not. And same thing here, right? We have on the left the Pung 7804, and on the right the Bung 7804, which is the Binance fork. Both of these are non-fungible, right? But one thing that I like, and for the rest of the presentation, I'll keep referring to, is I'll refer more to the rarity instead of the non-fungibility, where non-fungibility is one technical aspect. But I think when we think of collectibles that are on the blockchain, there's a lot more than just non-fungibility. And here in this case, again, both of these assets are non-fungible. But what's really distinguished between the two is that the one on the left is a lot rarer because it has this unique property that it's the original 7804, whereas the one on the right is a copy. Any copy of CryptoPunks would have a similar comparison. So I like to say, let's look at the rarity instead of the fungibility for a little bit. And now this brings me to what I call the curse of non-triviality, which, to be fair, is completely name I made up. Don't reuse it. But in general, and this is something that I'm sure everyone knows already, but rarer assets are harder for users to price. And the reason why I say this is the curse of non-fungibility, and it's very obvious for most people, is is for the consequences that this will have on the user experience in the products that you're creating. And I'll get into this a bit later, but this is really, keep in mind, the rarer the assets are, the harder they are for users to price. And for example, here's a really good example of, imagine you're brand new users, you jump into CryptoKitties. All of these CryptoKitties look totally unique. You can't tell which one is more unique to the other. They all look as if they were rare, right? All of these are non-fungible. How do you get the users to jump into this and decide right at the moment, I want to buy CryptoKitty, right? They have to start doing research. They have to start looking, okay, which one is my favorite? What characteristics am I looking for? And then they have to look at the price. And if they see the price, they have to somehow know, is this the right price for this to pay, right? And this is what I mean by the rarer an asset is, the more expensive it becomes. Is that here it's not so much that some of these are rarer, is that they are perceived to be as rarer than others, right? Some of these characteristics looks very unique compared to the others. I compared to cats that look very different. For the users that is not an expert yet in CryptoKitties, it's very difficult to establish which asset is actually rare, right? And this brings me to the point that the more options requires better expert. The more options you have in a product where users have to participate financially, uh, the better you're expecting them to be as experts. The more options, it just the entry level for your users is much higher. The more options you have to purchase, and this is not only true in NFTs; it's a common knowledge in most of product development and the traditional industries. But one exception that I think is not an exception, but a way that a product that I think got away with this really really well is NBA Top Shot. And for a few reasons I'll get back to, but one of the primary one I believe is that uh, there's a lot of basketball fans in the world, right? Which means that almost all their brand new users, a lot of them were already expert at deciding, is this basketball player better than another, right? Which gives them a edge in terms of, is this the right price to pay for an asset? Well, I compared this price of my favorite basketball player with a basketball player that is less known. Of course, my favorite one is going to be worth more expensive. That makes your players a lot easier to onboard in your product, to participate in the economy. And yeah, again, this is because there is already a pool of expert in the world that existed for this product, but it's not always true for a product that you might be creating at the moment. Which brings me to another point I want to make, is that superficial rarity is not worth it. And what I mean by this is that if we go back to the CryptoKitty example, there's a lot of beautiful NFT projects like CryptoPunks and Decentralands and Sandbox and many others that create rare assets and unique assets in the in their platforms that I think are very well done. But if you make your assets non-fungible just for increasing the rarity, just to create uniqueness in your assets, you really have to know what you're doing, because for various reasons, but impairing or the difficulty with price discovery of NFTs is a real user adoption friction. You're adding a lot of friction in your product if your users have to become experts before they can participate. And when I say they have to become expert, of course a user can come in, make a purchase without knowing much about the product. But if they make a purchase or a sell without being expert, it means that other experts are most likely profiting out of your new users, right? So your new users are getting cannibalized by your more experienced users, which is also a difficult problem. So what can we do about this, right? We're almost on the 15, 30 minutes. What can we do about this? There's many things we can do about this while keeping the NFTs, right? How can we make it so that our users are not thrown into this long learning curve before being able to participate in our products? So the first thing is, the most obvious, is help your users with price discovery, right? Price discovery is the process of finding a price or establishing a price for an asset. You can help your users. Top Shot do it. There's many ways of doing it. For example, the housing market does it very well. If you look at houses in your vicinity, you'll have suggestive price. There's apps that allow to help you evaluate the price of your house. Same thing you can do with NFTs. You can look at past existing NFTs that are similar to the NFT your user is about to purchase. Say, hey, this is a calculated price that we expect. Make sure you're not too far off of it. So there's a lot of tools that you can help to provide a suggested price to your users. that can help with price discovery to eliminate that initial barrier. Another way of doing it is to wrap your NFTs into fungible tokens. So convert your NFTs into fungible assets. And then these fungible assets can have a lot more market data. And the more market data, the easier it is for an asset to find its price. So two examples that I personally know, NFTX and fractional. NFTX allows you to build index funds for NFTs. Fractional allows you to create, to fractionalize your NFTs into your CL20. And both of these will allow markets to help find the price of your NFTs, which is a good way also to help your users pay the right price. And lastly, an alternative idea that I would like to propose is instead of starting with non-fungible asset as your prime asset, if your product is not live yet, I would invite you to start contemplating the idea of instead using fungible tokens as your base, as your assets, but with various rarities. So you could have fungible tokens that only have 5 that exist in the world, or 1 million that exist in the world, and make it clear that this is the case. Being fungible by default means that you can start using with automated market maker. There's going to be more trading volume, which will help again find the price of your assets. So that was 15 minutes. So just as a conclusion, the rare assets are harder to price. So make sure that if you add rarity in your products, it's not just superficial rarity, that the rarity is meaningful and is useful, because otherwise you're adding friction without much upside. A hard to price asset adds friction to your users, as I just said. And if you really want that non-fungibility and that uniqueness to your asset, make sure that you help your users with price discovery, for example, by wrapping your NFTs, or also if you're willing to forego some of the non-fungibility aspect, you can start with rare fungible asset, and in order to help with price discovery and liquidity.